30 to Radio Sri Lanka. We're going to get in conversation with Dr. Mrs. Ajantha Perera, environmentalist, and we're going to have a little chat on global warming and the environment. A very good morning to you, Dr. Perera.
Good morning.
And, we're very happy to have you join us this Tuesday morning. And we'd like to ask you, Dr. Perera, whether you could give us an insight a little bit on the main reason for this global warming. Well, that's something on everybody's, on the tip of everybody's tongue these days, isn't it? Global warming.
Yes.
So what exactly is global warming?
Well, basically, global warming is a phenomenon where it's actually a weather pattern change over 30 years period. So this has really been caused due to the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, we all know that even as human beings, when we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. So we also contribute to global warming. But then, on the other side, the trees are there to take up the carbon dioxide and to balance the nature so that the level of carbon dioxide would remain at a very optimum level. But today, there are so many vehicles on the road which are burning all the diesel and the petrol, and which is also elevating the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And on top of that, and actually, because the earth is getting heated up, the ice caps are melting and the sea level is rising. And so when the sea level rises, basically what happens is all the small islands, even like Sri Lanka or Maldives or the Fiji Islands, Tonga, the small islands, they can go underwater because the sea level would rise. And this would not be seen immediately, but it's over a long period of time you realize that your own island is shrinking. So this is actually a situation where people think of development, but then do we really develop remembering and thinking about what could happen in the future? So global warming is controllable, but man needs to use brain power, intelligence, knowledge, the whole planet to move on. The trees are producing food, but they're utilizing carbon dioxide in order to do that. So they are the only ones who can remedy the situation. But unfortunately, in countries like Sri Lanka and the rest of the world, the cutting down of trees has become the thing of the day because they believe that development or buildings are much more important than the trees. So this is where the conflict comes.
Right. So talking of Sri Lanka, its direct impact on Sri Lanka, would you like to enlighten us on that, the direct impact of this particular...
We need to understand Sri Lanka is the sand that we have because it's just the soil of the nation is Sri Lanka, nothing else. It's just the soil of the nation. So our boundaries are demarcated by the soil. And so anything that would take away our soil away from through sea erosion would definitely shrink Sri Lanka. So we need to understand that first and foremost. And then the second thing is Sri Lanka being an island which can grow a number of trees. I mean, the forest cover is very important for us because in order to remedy the decreased amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we need to have trees. Now, when I talk about trees, it's not just 1, 2, 3 trees being planted on the roadside for landscape purpose. I'm talking about forests. I'm talking about good ecosystems, and I think it's about the mangroves, it's about the beach plants, it's about the Singaraja forest, Vilpattu. We need to understand these are resources for Sri Lanka in order for us to have sustainable development. They are not blocks, they are not hindrances, but they are rather resources what the next generations need. So we need to become extremely intelligent in dealing. We do need development, and I'm saying I'm one of the most keenest persons to see Sri Lanka as a developed nation. So basically, development is a must for the people, but we need to make sure also that our natural resources are protected so that we can live better.
So, talking of the present forest cover, do you think the present forest cover that we have is sufficient, or is there an erosion on that, or what is your idea on that, Dr. Perera?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things written about. I mean, I know there are a lot of scientists interior because you have to go through the outer and then the buffer zone. So this is very very important for us to remember. If we have plans, let's stick to the plans. And I think what happens very often is that most of these people who are taking decisions in the ministries, the officers that I'm talking about, they do know about this. And so they need to be very careful on when they're developing. Let's say the officers should look at these management plans and they should make sure that they do not approve as a nation.
Yeah, so basically we've got to take care of the forests as well and toe the line in development too, isn't it? They go hand in hand, but not being like contradicting each other, like for development purposes, like eroding the forest cover, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And then also another thing I think we need to remember is the mangroves. And I know there was a lot of talk about the mangroves in the last few weeks and so on. Okay. And the mangroves, the advantage of the mangroves is that lagoons are for fishery. Now, we need fishery because we depend on the protein that comes from the fishery sector. Now, the mangroves are basically trees which grow on the banks of a lagoon, and their root system is such that the small larvae, the small fish can really grow there very safely. The little larvae do not want to be swimming in the where the current is very high. So they find refuge in the little roots which are from these mangroves, and they really are plenty of the small larvae, and the fish are really growing there, and then only they will move on to the waters. So these are like the homes of the prawns, the fish, and so on. So the moment we cut those, two things we do. One is we erode the soil. The second thing that we do is we actually deprive the fishery sector. So the fishermen generally know that the mangroves are very, very important for them. And then the ecosystem, the lagoon as an ecosystem is very fragile. We should not touch it too much because all the animals are living together in harmony with inside it. And the moment we touch it through adding a pollutant or cutting the trees, we are disturbing the system. And it's the fishery sector that suffers from it. And at the end of the day, it's the economy of the country. So we need to be, I think it's the knowledge base. I think most of the time we teach these things in school, we teach them at the university level, but I think somehow or the other, either the teachers are not doing a pretty good job or they are not actually getting the the students to understand it and also to be practically doing these things. So I think people who are actually at the moment in the decision-making sectors, in the ministries, the officers, the fishery officers, the environmental officers, they have been taught these things for a long, long time. And I think this is, it's time that they really pass that message on to the people in a very effective way. And thereby, that together, the country can grow forward to prosperity, but always protecting the environment because we need the environment to live.
Yeah, so basically, as you say, like all that is learned in theory has to be put into practice, isn't it?
Very, very true. I think one of the disadvantages in the Sri Lankan education system is we are not practical people. We learn a lot from theory. I think, unfortunately, even the universities are today, they are geared towards giving certificates away and giving degrees away rather than actually practically teaching people exactly what it all means. So I think until and unless the education system becomes a very practical thing, getting a certificate or a degree has absolutely zero value. And I think we all can see that day to day in Sri Lanka because our people are very knowledgeable. They have lots of degrees, but at the end of the day, they don't know exactly how to put their knowledge into practice. And this is where the conflicts come. I think environmental conflicts are created due to misunderstanding, due to lack of knowledge. And I think the more the people get to know about what is environment, how we should protect it, people will become part and parcel of the development process. But I think, unfortunately, Sri Lanka has not being able to manage that. And this has been done very well in other parts of the world. And if I may say also, our housing, how we build houses, our design processes, they're all wrong to such a large extent that we are actually, the development structures, the infrastructure that we are putting is also coming into conflict with the environment. So it's about practicality of your knowledge, practicality of your theory. Without practicality, we would not be able to develop as human beings, because human beings should have knowledge. That's excellent. Wisdom is what is lacking. Without wisdom, we would not be able to put knowledge into practice. So this is something that I wish for the youth of Sri Lanka today, because we really need to have that practicality and excellent decision making.
That's very true, Dr. Perera, that you have an excellent point there, that it has to be a practical way of doing stuff to overcome this issue. And talking something on a very day-to-day note, many people complain, and even I do, and I'm sure you as well. We complain of talking of extreme heat, and then we talk of extreme cold weather temperatures. So basically, is this also part of this whole global warming issue?
Yeah, to a large extent it is. Actually, the climate change is really something which will bring about extreme weather conditions. Like if there is rain, it will really flood. There'll be so much of rain that extreme weather conditions. Or when it is dry, it will go towards the extreme of dry weather. So climate change is really about going to extremes. Like, for example, if you have cyclones, it won't be, very often the cyclones won't come, but the frequency will be less, but the cyclones themselves become extremely intensive. So this is where we need to be very careful. And I think one of the most important things in a country like Sri Lanka, especially as an island nation, is that we need to understand the importance of taking care of this issue of climate change, because we need to have adaptability. Now, every house that we build should have enough of air circulation such that you don't feel the warmth that is happening outside. And I think today, if you look at many of the structures, the hotels, the large, infrastructures that we are building, without the electricity, without the air conditioning, we would not survive. We would die if there's not enough of energy around, because we would not be able to tolerate it. But in a nation such as Sri Lanka, where there is plenty of air, plenty of sunlight, but we are still building buildings which are, airtight. And, everybody's depending on AC. And I think people think that it's a big advancement if they have air conditioning in their house. And I think it's ridiculous, because we have plenty of free air, and getting access to that is a wonderful thing. So basically, we need to develop this concept of courtyards, architectural designing in such a way so that we adapt to it, because we cannot, it's very difficult. It's a global phenomenon. So it's very difficult to remedy it in a very quick way on the climate change issues, but we need to adapt to it. And then the other thing is that building structures very close to the coast needs to be prohibited, because there is a buffer zone that people need to look into, but I think unfortunately today the buffer zones are forgotten again. After the tsunami, people were very concerned about buffer zones, and suddenly buffer zones are again gone. So this is again what I'm saying is, there are a lot of educated people in Sri Lanka. There are brilliant minds in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, practicality, understanding, thinking of sustainability, future is very, very important, because we need to, the knowledge should be put to use in these areas. And knowledge is plenty in Sri Lanka, so I don't think there's any issue. But again, I say climate change is an issue, a global issue, where we do not have too much of control. We can do our part, but how do we adapt to it is the most important thing, because we need to make sure that we do not disturb our tree cover. We need to enhance it. We need to take care of the management strategies that has already been worked out, respect them in development process, and in the development, make sure that it's a human-friendly development, not something from outside, but rather humanly friendly development, which can be tolerated by the people in this country.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mrs. Ajantha Perera, for that very useful advice you gave us on environmental topics and also this global warming issue, which is very, very relevant to our very own country. Thank you very much once again for your time, and it was good talking to you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, we were in conversation with Dr. Mrs. Ajantha Perera, environmentalist, on the topic of global warming and the environment.